All right, so now we'll hand over to Graham and I'll let him introduce you. And as I mentioned earlier, he's going to take you through some very useful information around fatigue management.
Okay. All right, well firstly, hello, my name is Graham and most of you will not know me, that's okay. I'm part of what they call the Board of Management that I guess oversees and gently encourages and directs, I guess, the Street Chaplain Ministry. So like every organisation, there's usually a board of some sort and I'm privileged to serve in that. As part of the board, one of the things that's really important for us is that we position our street chaplains really well. And that is with good knowledge, some skills, and we heard a little bit about first aid, that sort of thing. And we also want to give you probably a good understanding about fatigue. So for those among you who might end up as street chaplains on the streets at night time, this will be particularly relevant for you. If you are heading to be a street chaplain in the daytime ministry, maybe not so, you might think that's the case, but if you start to think about the hours and things that you're awake, maybe it'll start to resonate as well. So that's primarily why I'm here today, is to make sure that we have given you some information to help you be safer as street chaplains, okay, and that's really important. The other thing is that, and I just saw the previous colleague, a police officer, that's my background too. So I spent some 37 years in policing and retired about a year and a half ago, and I can tell you that I have experienced fatigue in policing. And so as an organisation, there were a lot of things that police did to try and manage fatigue a little bit better. I'm guessing that in the crowd here tonight, there will be some people who either have been or are shift workers. Would that be the case? If you have been or you are a shift worker? Yeah, there's a couple of us. All right, so yeah, another nod as well. All right, maybe some of you will be shift workers in the years to come. You're certainly becoming a little bit of a shift worker as a street chaplain, so it's very relevant to what we're talking about tonight. Okay, I'm going to do my best to stay in focus for the cameras because I have the feeling that we'll use this presentation a few times. So hello to the next group, whoever the next group is as well. Okay, I've got up on the screen there a little bit of a slide, and I must admit every time I see this slide I just want to start yawning. So I'm not sure how you folks are going after a long day. My guess is that many of you started probably early in the morning and have been going all day with a day job and are now doing some extra stuff learning about street chaplains. So it's probably been a long day for many of you, and you might actually feel a little bit like that at times as well. So if you do yawn, I forgive you, all right? It's all good. All right, this evening I'm going to go through just a number of slides, and each dot point represents a slide, I guess. And we are going to just help our understanding around fatigue and probably talk about some things you can do to manage that really well. So we're going to go through what is fatigue, what causes it. We're going to ask an interesting question about am I getting enough sleep? That's always an interesting question. Am I normally asleep at that time? So if you're normally a daytime person working in the daytimes, and you're now working as a street chaplain at 3 in the morning, my guess is that you're normally asleep at that time. Am I having a really long day? That's an interesting question. Just out of interest, did anyone start before 7 o'clock this morning? Anyone up before 7? Okay, keep your hand up. If you're up before 6, keep your hand up. Up before 5. Oh, okay, up before 4. Up before 3. Our friend wins the prize. So some of us have had some really long days. Okay, so you'll start to understand why that slide is in there when we talk about it. We're also going to have a little look at a Street Chaplain's Friday, I call it, and we'll just walk through what that looks like, again from a fatigue perspective. A little bit about warning signs of fatigue, and most of this stuff will be very familiar to many of you. If you've ever driven on country roads and started to feel a little bit and you're not quite sure what happened the last 3 kilometres, or the eyes start to go, you've sensed fatigue. Okay, and we want to talk a little bit about that. And then the important bit is how can I minimise it? How can I actually better manage myself so that I'm not overtired and fatigued, because there's lots of risk issues with that. And although I've got discussion and questions at the tail end, I'm very happy to, I guess, chat as we go. So if there's something that sparks an interest or you want to ask something about it, I'll do my best to answer as we go. If I don't know, I'll tell you, and I'll take it on notice and see what we do for next slide presentation. Okay, fatigue. There's a bit of a slide there about fatigue, and it talks about both mental and physical. And as you can see, it's more than just feeling tired. Okay, and most of us have felt tired, and you might even feel a little bit tired today. That's okay. But fatigue is when you reach a stage where you are not able to function normally. Your body starts to do things or not do things, and you have very little control over it. That's what we're starting to talk about when we say fatigue. The causes of fatigue. Well, there's probably a number of things that really contribute. And I guess from a street chaplain's perspective, or as a soon-to-be street chaplain, there's some things here that will be relevant to each of you. And the first of those is around not getting enough sleep each night. Okay, and we'll talk a bit about that in a couple of moments, but it's the average sleep I'm getting every night over a week. How does that look? Then we'll look at another cause of fatigue, and that is if I'm actually awake doing something when I'm normally asleep. And if you take on the role of a street chaplain and as an example start to work the streets of Perth in Northbridge, and you're walking through to 2 or 3 in the morning, my guess is that normally you're asleep at that hour. Okay, so there's potential for fatigue. And the other thing we'll touch on tonight is around having a really long day. And some of us already here tonight are probably sensing that it's a long day. So you'll understand that when we go through that. Okay, the first one's about, am I getting enough sleep? And this is a really interesting thing for perhaps each of us to do and to reflect on. I'm not going to ask for answers or embarrass people at all here tonight, but really it's just a little exercise where you can ask yourself, what would be my average hours of sleep each night, perhaps for this week? You know, am I getting a good, healthy, 7 to 8 hours? Maybe I'm getting 12 hours. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe I'm getting much less than that. So the question is, for each of us, how many hours are we getting each night? And the research tells us that we need to average around 7 to 8 hours on average each night in order to, I guess, maintain that balance. And if we are averaging less than 7 or 8 hours per night, then we start to build up what's called a sleep debt. And you can see a little diagram there, a pictorial cartoon, I guess, which shows how a little bit of sleep debt starts to grow and get larger, and then eventually it crushes the fellow who's trying to support it, trying to hold it up. And that's really what sleep debt's about. You can miss out on 1 hour on Monday and another hour on Tuesday and a couple of hours on Wednesday. You might think that's just a little bit, but as it starts to grow, before long you've got maybe 10 or 12 hours that you owe your body. Okay, so as a street chaplain, one of the things to reflect on is, am I getting sufficient sleep during the week to keep a nice balance as I head towards my night shift? Okay, there's a little diagram on the bottom right-hand side there. It looks like a little an addition where someone has added up the hours and worked out that they've clocked up 49.43 hours in the week, which is about 7 hours per night, and big tick. Okay, and I guess that's the exercise that we would love you to do as a street chaplain, is to just mark yourself and know how you're travelling on the sleep. Okay, that's the first thing. Because if we don't get enough sleep in the week, we have the risk of fatigue. The next slide is about the hours of work, and for us shift workers who have worked, I think our bodies have been pulled from pillar to post, and we've done all sorts of different shifts and hours and things, and you probably have a sense of it. But if you're not familiar with the shift work, you will find that between 1 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the morning, that is when your body wants to slow down. It wants to go to sleep. That's normally what it does at that time, and your alertness is low. Okay, so as a chaplain, as a street chaplain, out on the streets, out past 1 o'clock in the morning, you're entering that zone when your body wants to slow down. Okay, so between 1 and 6, your alertness is low. Particularly 3 and 5 a.m. That's the real sleepy times, and I can tell you from my experience, driving cars on night shifts, that's the danger time. Many of our colleagues will start their conversations in the car to keep each other going, wide awake during those times. Okay, that's a really interesting time between 3 and 5. And one of the sad things we do see from the research is that if we look at when traffic crashes occur, in terms of times of the day in particular, that's the time when most of the crashes are occurring. Okay, there's a real peak between 3 and 5 in the morning. It's where cars run off the road. It's where cars leave a road and pile into a tree or a pole or something like that. Okay, so it's really the danger time. So again, as a street chaplain, if you're doing the hours and you're finishing at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning, your mind is going, this is the time my body is most wanting to shut down and be asleep. It's my danger time. I need to be really careful how I do things. I need to be careful when I drive home. Okay, so we'll talk about this. It's not to say it's not manageable at all, but it's the stuff you need to be aware of. Okay, the next one's an interesting one. It's a little bit of research that was done around the effect of, I guess, the number of hours that you're awake. Okay, so if you can imagine a day that starts early in the morning, perhaps at 7 o'clock, you can sort of do the math here. At midday, you've got 5 hours. If you work the way through to midnight again, you've clocked up 17 hours. So you can start to work out what 17 hours looks like. If you start early in the day, if you start at 5 in the morning, you'll reach those 17 hours much earlier. But what they've found in the research, interestingly, is that, and as people reach these hours of being awake, the body starts to behave as if you've been drinking alcohol. It has the same effect on your responses and how you do things and how you're a little bit slower and not quite as good at reading the play. And they have been able to show from the research that after 17 hours of being awake, it's like you're driving with a blood alcohol content, that's BAC, of 0.05. If you've been awake for 21 hours, it's as if you're driving at a blood alcohol content of 0.08. And most of us would have heard of that term, 08, because that usually means someone's had a bit of a skinful of alcohol and they're not properly in charge of their car. Okay, so the number of hours we are awake in the day, in a single day, can actually start to affect us and our driving ability and our judgment and things like that. Okay, so it's just, again, something to start to think about. Again, nothing to panic about, but to think about and to manage. All right, this is an interesting little slide. This is the what I call the Street Chaplain's Friday, and it starts off with the street chaplain waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So the alarm goes. Now, is that me? No, it's all good. So the alarm goes, and of course the street chaplain wakes up and starts the process of getting ready for work. And as you can see from the times on the screen there, we slowly work through the day. We get to work at 8 o'clock in the morning. We're sort of working through the day. Lucky person gets to finish at 4 o'clock. Not many people get to do that nowadays, but this street chaplain does. Must have a good boss. And finishes at 4, then heads home. Then, of course, there's some dinner, and, well, you've got to watch TV as well. I've got to catch the news and a few other things. And before you know it, it's 10 o'clock. It's time to start getting ready for my shift. Okay, and of course they put on the jacket and bits and pieces or whatever you might need to do to get prepared. Drive into a location, and probably by certainly midnight you're out and about as a street chaplain. At 2 in the morning, you're probably out and about, and around about 4 in the morning, a busy night in Perth or Northbridge, you've finished and you start to drive home. So you can see on the far right-hand side there in the hours awake, we start to tally those figures. So for the person who gets up at 6 in the morning, by the time they reach around about 11 at night, they are as if they are at a 0.05 blood alcohol content. As they get through to about 3 in the morning, it's like being 0.8. It means your responses are slowing down. You're not as bright, as quick as what you normally are. And of course, if you stayed even longer and didn't get home to 7 in the morning for some reason, then you've well and truly done 24 hours without sleep, and of course you're like a 0.10. Okay, so these are just things to again think about in terms of how we might manage that so that it's safe for you and for your colleagues. All right, I'm guessing that some of these might sound familiar to perhaps a few of us here tonight. These are some of the warning signs of fatigue, particularly if you are driving home from a night shift. So if you're in the car and perhaps you've headed off from the city and you're heading south side somewhere or heading up to the north or out to Midland, whatever the case may be, if you feel that your head is starting to nod down or move or not stay up where it should be, it is a sign of fatigue. If you close your eyes, okay, that horrible feeling, if you've ever driven on places like the Brand Highway, where it's many kilometres and many people drive just continuous all the way through, and the eyes start to flicker. And before you know it, you've had a split second or two where you've actually had like a power nap, a little sleep while you're driving at 110 kilometres an hour. Okay, so it's a horrible feeling, and maybe some of you have felt that in years gone by, but that is fatigue. Yawning, right? If you, all those sorts of things, you know it's fatigue. Okay, there's some things you can do about that as well. If you miss a road sign, if you normally turn off at some location and that's the way you go home and, oh, I've missed it. You know, you missed your exit, same thing. Okay, these are all things that would indicate fatigue. So as a street chaplain, if you are driving home from your night shift, whether it be Perth or Joondalup or Fremantle or anywhere else really, if you're driving home late and some of these things start to occur, remember, this is fatigue. Okay, now what can I do to minimise it? That's a nice word, but how do I help myself? How do I actually look after myself so that it's safe, safer for me? Okay, and the first thing is plenty of sleep. Okay, so if you've got a shift coming up, and it may be that you do shifts once every 2 or 3 weeks, it doesn't matter the frequency here, but in the particular week that you've got your shift, have a look at the hours of sleep. Just make sure you haven't got that sleep debt starting to grow above your head and getting heavier and heavier as you head towards a Friday or a Saturday. And then on the day of a shift, think about the awake hours. So if you had to get up at 4 in the morning because you had an early start at work, and that's the reality of a day job, then in your mind you're saying, I've got a long day here today. I'm going to have lots of hours in this day, so how do I actually start to do something about that? And the most obvious thing is to try and get a couple of hours sleep. All right, so if you start early in the morning and you get home later in the day, feet up, try and get a bit of sleep just to sort of break that continuous hours of being awake. Okay, so a little bit of sleep. Driving. Okay, some of these things are very familiar to us, I'm sure. We all have heard about coffee. It's recommended by the research that if you are about to head home after a night shift, that sort of thing, have a caffeinated drink of some type, teas, coffees, there's all sorts of beverages nowadays. It will give your body a bit of a spark, okay? I mean non-alcoholic beverages, okay? So that's the best thing. So some sort of coffee drink, And if I were on night shift in a street chaplain, I'd probably go, you know what, I'm going to grab my takeaway coffee just as I finish, and I'll take that with me to the car, and I'll probably sip that in the car going home. All right, so that's one thing you can do if you're a coffee drinker or a tea drinker. The other interesting thing is that you can engage the mind. So turn your radio on, all right? And as it suggests there, look for a talkback type program. Look for some program on the radio, and it might be as dull as anything, but it's someone talking. Okay, it'll get your mind thinking, what's this person on about? You know, this is crazy, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's the mind thinking about the words, okay? Keeps you awake. All right, so talkback radio is particularly good. If you are travelling with a passenger, if you are with someone else, by all means, talk to each other. Okay, encourage each other. Talk about the shift you've just had. Wow, how was this? You know, what do we learn from that? We're going to tell this to someone, you know. Just talk about it. Or talk about life, doesn't matter, just chat. Okay, and it just keeps the mind active. Drinking water is another one. So if your coffee's all gone and you've got a bottle of water, keep sipping your water as you go. Again, it just helps the body stay fresh and helps to manage fatigue. An interesting one here is around the heater in the car. So if you've done a bit of a night shift and it's been a bit cool and you jump in the car and you turn the heater on because it's cold, well, what the research actually suggests is maybe don't turn the heater on so much, maybe just a tiny bit, and instead maybe rug up yourself. So put on a jacket or something to keep yourself warm, and so that the air around you isn't warm. Okay, and I'm sure we've all had that feeling when we've been in a car, it's been cold outside and we've jumped in the car and it's nice and warm, and gone, I'm asleep. All right, so you don't want to do that when you're a driver. All right, so turn your heater off if you can brave it, and rug up as a driver and drive home. And the other one is particularly relevant for, I guess, the folks in our country areas where they might live in one town and then perhaps be a street chaplain in another town. And I know that occurs in some locations. And sometimes there'll be a bit of a drive from where they've been working to all the way home. And again, you'll have a sense of what that is. If there is a bit of a drive, then the recommendation is that you stop at some stage. Get out and walk, stretch the legs. Okay, I'm wide awake, all good, I've had my water, you know, whatever it is, just have a bit of a break. And even if you're in the metro area, if you have a sense that it's a long drive home to Two Rocks, or it's a long drive home to Mandurah, then just think about a spot where you might pull over, maybe it's a coffee spot, just somewhere where you'll just break the trip. Okay, and these are things that you can do. So really it's a list of things that you can pick from to help you manage your fatigue. Okay. All right, I'm going to open it up for questions and we'll probably chat about it. There is a slide at the back which you should have in your kit. It's a little one-pager. You might want to print that out and stick it on the fridge or something, or cut part of the page out and put it on the fridge. It's really a useful thing to remind you about fatigue. And as you head towards your shift, you'll have this nagging feeling, I must check my hours. Have I had my sleep? Have I had plenty of rest today? Have I worked too much today? And have I got my kit ready for the drive home? Have I got some pocket money for the coffee? Have I got a water bottle? Have I got the jacket to put on so I can leave the heater off? You know, things like that. Okay, so it's just a helpful little kit. And as I mentioned earlier today, our heart's desire is for you folks to make an enormous difference in the streets of Perth and our country towns, wherever you might serve. But you're also safe as you do it. And getting you home to your loved ones is just as important to us as well. That's something we really value. So I might close the presentation and perhaps might chat about fatigue and see how we go. Thank you.
Yes, hello.
I asked that, is there any proven research that for power nap during the day, 10-15 minutes? As in my previous workplace, because we work in IT, sometimes we do work late at night, and And I do encourage my staff to, in between every 2 to 3 hours, to have that 15 minutes of rest on that. Because we do drive around equipment and stuff like that. So what's that actually?
Well, it's a really interesting question. The question is around the, I guess, power naps. Are they a useful thing? Are they a helpful thing? To be quite honest, I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't read anything about the value of power naps. I do know of people who take them. In fact, I used to work for a commissioner, would you believe, who would take probably a power nap, a 3-minute power nap, I think. He'd be gone. Next minute, he'd be awake. Okay, boss, all good, you know. So I know it does happen. People do take power naps. Does anyone do power naps? Anyone do that space? Yeah? And helpful? Yeah?
You don't go beyond about 10 or 12 minutes.
10 or 12?
And go down to a deeper level of sleep.
Okay.
So that's just enough to refresh you.
Very good. And you wake up of your own volition, or do you set little alarm clocks?
Well, the first time I was doing, when I was nursing, I used to time it, but after a little while, I think your body just started to get into a lower sleep, a lower deeper level of sleep, and you're waking up.
All right. It sounds like power naps have been helpful for some. Others that power nap? Yeah, it works for you as well.
You can actually doze off to nice sleep.
Yeah, that's my style. I really don't do that. None of it's power nap. I'm out for a good long sleep.
But I'd just like to say that some years ago I was driving home after night shift, and I never thought I did it, but my body actually shut down.
Yeah.
Body actually, I'm not talking nodding of the head, but you actually
Shut down.
shut down.
It's a horrible feeling.
I could have killed my nearly, very serious.
Yeah, so we understand that
That
feeling.
was about 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Because there's no traffic on the road to keep you alert.
The interesting thing with fatigue, particularly at that 3 o'clock in the morning type stuff, and you're driving, is the body can literally shut down, and you cannot control that. You cannot say to your body, "Stay awake. I want you to get me home safely." It won't listen to you. It will shut down.
So what's the best thing at that time? Pull over, or
Sorry.
what's the best thing to do at that time?
The best thing, if you're feeling in the eyes and all the rest of it, pull over. Okay, have a drink of water. Okay, I've walked around the car a few times, put the radio on. Okay, right now, I'll do another 20 minutes. And if you start to feel it again, pull over. And then next time you do a shift like that, make sure you bank the hours and you're not carrying that big load over your head, because that's probably what's caused it, I'd say. Okay. Others? Any other thoughts about fatigue?
Fatigue recovery.
Sorry, the
Fatigue recovery. I know sleep seems the obvious answer, but if you are fatigued and you don't have much time to sleep, or the environment's not conducive to sleep, is there any other forms of fatigue recovery? Because I think I was fatigued. I did my first observation on Friday night and then straight through into school fate and everything else. I was pretty buggered by Saturday evening. And it actually doesn't go out after just one sleep cycle. It's sort of actually Sunday afternoon. I was still feeling pretty buggered.
It takes a while, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's like
just wondering, I mean, is it what, drink a lot of water, or what's is there, because I think people will get fatigued.
I guess we could all do what many of us do nowadays and consult Dr. Google or whatever the case may be, and have a look at some research. I'm sure there would be some research around what people can do to help liven up again. But as I understand it, it's about the hours of rest, and your body just reaches a stage where it says, you owe me big time, and I'm shutting down, and whether you like it or not, you're going to sleep. So you're going to sleep and sleep and sleep, and finally you get through. So it's probably a bit like the jet lag feeling, when you're sort of out of sorts, and takes a good sleep to try and get through sometimes. So as an answer, I'd suggest have a Google and see if you can find some other things other than sleep. I think you'll oversleep.
Hands up who's done an observation already and so experience going through till 3 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah, 3 o'clock in the morning. Anyone later? 4? 3s? Okay, 3s. 4:30? Okay. Reminds me of nightclub days in the 20s. I don't know how I did it those days. Others? 3s and 4s? Yeah? Okay, so you might have already had a little bit of a feel of a long day, because I think each of us has a day job, I'm sure, and if we get up really early in the mornings, it'll be just like our friend over here yawning. You know what happens once one starts to yawn, the whole lot start to go. So so if it is long days, you really have to start to plan your life a little bit and to plan the hours of sleep that you get. Okay, so as a street chaplain, as I mentioned before, grab your little checklist that's on the last page. I have mentioned to Oliver that there's an electronic copy of this if you want to have it. You can print out an A4 size of that particular sheet. Oh, you got one? Oh, good. Cut out the little checklist and remind yourself. Okay, the shift is coming up on Friday. How's my sleep going? On the Friday itself, wow, I got up really early in the morning. I've got to put a spacer in there. I've got to get a nap before I go. Set the alarm clock on your phone. Don't sleep through, miss the shift. And I guess prepare. Take your kit bag. Take some bits and pieces. Just like you carry a kit bag out in the streets, take your own personal kit bag of things that will get you home safely. And that's really, really important for each of us for good reasons, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think most of the chaplains certainly either try and have a good sleep in the morning before they have a roster that night. If you can't do that, if you can have a nap in the evening before needing to get ready and go to your shift, then that's another good solution. And then also, I guess for the next day, sometimes it's unavoidable that you'll have something fairly early the next day, but wherever possible, like say you've been out on a Saturday night shift and perhaps you want to go to church on a Sunday morning, but it's probably best to, get that sleep, and then perhaps, when the family's coming home from church on the Sunday, then, it's getting closer towards midday and perfect, you get up and you've had a good slab of sleep.
I was very happy to find that we could get really good coffee in the middle of the night in Northbridge.
Is
That
it?
really helped.
Oh, well, there you go. So trade that knowledge, find out where the coffee places are,
You and I.
and you'll find increasingly over time that some of these business people will actually gift you coffees and things because they really appreciate the work of the chaplains. And it's interesting talking to Garth, the state director for chaplains. There's a growing sense in the community from business people, growing interest in street chaplains and the sorts of services that they might provide, more than just the Northbridge at night time. Okay, and we've got a little bit of that now with the daytime chaplains. We're also hearing it about, can they come and do around Beaufort Street when the festivals are on? Can they come and do other things, when a sky show's on? So we're getting this groundswell. And as I said to Garth, when someone finally says, let's get some cruise ship chaplains going, let me know and I'll apply. And so will each of you. And we'll all head off to the Greek Islands or somewhere. But anyway, on behalf of, the Board of Management, just want to say thank you for the opportunity to talk with you tonight. I hope it was at least interesting to some of you, and I hope that there's some things in what you've heard that you can grab a hold of and do to manage so it's safe. Okay, that's really important. And God bless you. Really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.